Chapter 2. Chains and Daggers. The walls of the transport's holding cell closed in around Marcus, the cold steel absorbing what little warmth his body offered. Hours passed without food or water, his throat dry and his mind circling like a tethered hawk. Who was that man? Why had he been dragged into this? More pressingly, what did this even mean? The faint hum of engines suddenly shifted to a lower tone. The transport shuddered as it began its descent. Marcus braced himself against the wall, his thoughts racing. He had heard whispers about Dominion detainment centers, places where prisoners vanished into darkness and re-emerged as loyal shells of their former selves, if they re-emerged at all. The door hissed open again. 2 Dominion soldiers entered, their faces obscured by helmets that reflected the dim light. They hauled Marcus to his feet, their grips unyielding. The man from before, the one who had addressed him in the cell, was gone. "Where are you taking me?" Marcus demanded, though his voice trembled. Neither soldier replied. Instead, they guided him down a narrow corridor that led to the transport's main hatch. Outside, the icy landscape of Europa stretched into endless shadows, broken only by the distant glow of Borealis's mining lights. The brutal cold bit through Marcus's thin clothing, making him shiver uncontrollably. A small outpost loomed ahead, stark and utilitarian, its edges sharp against the hazy backdrop of frost and methane clouds. Soldiers swarmed the perimeter like ants, their movements precise and regimented. This was no ordinary inspection. Something bigger was at play here. Inside the outpost, Marcus was shoved into a stark interrogation room. A single table and 2 chairs occupied the space, illuminated by a harsh overhead light. The soldiers secured him to one of the chairs, his wrists bound tightly to its arms, and then departed without a word. The silence was oppressive. Marcus's breath fogged in the freezing air as he stared at the steel door, waiting for it to open. When it finally did, the officer who had arrested him stepped inside, flanked by a guard. He carried a thin tablet, its screen glowing faintly with text and images Marcus couldn't make out. "Marcus Vex," the officer began, his voice clipped and formal. "Do you know why you're here?" "No," Marcus said, glaring up at him. "I'm just a mechanic. I haven't done anything." The officer smirked, tapping on his tablet. "And yet, here you are. Tell me, do you recognize this man?" He turned the screen toward Marcus, displaying a grainy image of the hooded figure who had spoken to him in the transport cell. Marcus's stomach tightened. I've never seen him before today." "Today?" the officer echoed. "Curious timing. This man is a known insurgent. He's been linked to multiple acts of sabotage against the Dominion, and yet he chose to speak to you." "He spoke to me, not the other way around," Marcus snapped, his anger outweighing his fear for a brief moment. "I don't know anything about him or what he wants." The officer leaned forward, his expression icy. "You're lying. The Dominion doesn't waste time on coincidences. You were seen near the insurgent, and you'll tell us why." Marcus clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. "I told you, I don't know anything." "Very well," the officer said, straightening. He turned to the guard. "Bring in the extractor." Marcus's blood ran cold. "Wait, what are you doing?" The officer ignored him. The guard left the room and returned moments later with a sleek, ominous device. Its surface gleamed under the harsh light, wires snaking from its base to a handheld control unit. The extractor, a neural interrogation tool designed to pry memories from unwilling minds. No, Marcus whispered, struggling against his bindings. You can't do this. You'll find the Dominion can do whatever it deems necessary, the officer replied coldly. As the guard approached with the device, a deafening explosion rocked the outpost. The light above shattered, plunging the room into chaos. Alarms blared, and the floor trembled beneath Marcus's feet. "What in—" the officer began, but his words were cut off by the sharp hiss of the door sliding open. The hooded man stepped inside, flanked by two figures in battered armor. Smoke clung to their clothes, and their weapons gleamed in the flickering emergency lights. Without hesitation, they fired at the guard and officer, dropping them before they could react. "Let's go," the hooded man said, moving swiftly to unbind Marcus. His hands were surprisingly steady. "We don't have much time." Marcus stared at him, bewildered. "What? Who are you?" "Your only chance," the man replied curtly. The other two insurgents secured the room, their weapons trained on the corridor beyond. One of them, a woman with a sharp gaze and a scar running down her jawline, tossed Marcus a coat and a pair of gloves. "Put these on," she ordered. "You'll freeze out there otherwise." Still reeling, Marcus obeyed, his fingers fumbling with the coat's fastenings. "Why are you helping me?" "Because you're worth helping," the hooded man said. He handed Marcus a small device, a data chip, its surface etched with faint circuitry. "Keep this safe. It contains information the Dominion can't afford to lose." "I don't understand," Marcus said, clutching the chip tightly. "Why me? Why not someone who knows what they're doing?" The man's expression softened slightly. "Sometimes, the people who don't think they're ready are the ones who surprise us the most." Before Marcus could respond, another explosion shook the outpost. The insurgents moved quickly, guiding him through the smoke-filled corridors. The sounds of gunfire and shouting grew fainter as they slipped into the icy wilderness beyond. For Marcus Vex, there was no turning back. Chains had been broken and daggers drawn.